Good morning. Did everyone have fun yesterday? Okay, that has to be louder because our new phrase is yes. Did everyone have fun yesterday? All right. And did your kids enjoy Friday Fun Night? All right. So I have the pleasure today to introduce our video that is about to show, highlighting all the wonderful things that are happening.
It feels like you can't do anything.
Well, the pain's kind of indescribable. It's very different at times. It can be dull pain, sharp pain.
It's been a struggle to try and push through.
There's so many kids who go through what I go through, and I'm not alone in this fight.
With kids being diagnosed with a disease like this, you reach out for help anywhere you can.
The Arthritis Foundation has helped change our lives.
They've provided, with this conference especially, they've provided an atmosphere where people can be themselves.
They're almost an extension of our own family. They support us in everything we do. They give us answers to the questions that we can't answer ourselves or don't understand.
Sometimes you feel different, but then when you come here, you don't really feel that different.
I think that what makes this conference so special for families is the fact that they can be with others like them.
Just the whole vibe of this conference, it just feels upbeat.
These conferences really are a gift, I think.
It can keep you down sometimes, but believe in yourself that you can get back up and do other things.
I wish that people just knew that children had arthritis to begin with.
Arthritis makes you stand out a lot. Most kids don't understand that kids can get arthritis.
The true success of the Arthritis Foundation and what we're doing at every single event is not necessarily just to raise funds to help the Arthritis Foundation, but also to raise awareness.
My one biggest wish is that they find a cure for arthritis.
If arthritis impacts their life in some way, then we're able to connect them with the Arthritis Foundation so that they can get the information and the support that they need.
Their mission really matches what we're doing in our communities, and so it's a nice blend of blending the families together.
Our mission is to make sure that we're making a remarkable impact on patients' lives. It's our mission, and the Arthritis Foundation as well.
We want to focus on developing the right resources and information to help them and to help people that are around them so they really get a better understanding about their disease and how to deal with it every day.
Now it's more about giving back.
We enjoy sharing hope with others.
It just means a lot to me, just that hope is like the word, because I've had troubles with hope in the past.
It's a great feeling to know you're really not alone in this.
The biggest thing that the foundation has done for me ultimately is introduce me to the camps that they help to run every year.
It was really fun because the counselors, they weren't like grown-ups, they were like 17, 18, so they were like really fun too.
Honestly, camp is the best thing ever.
I've always said I cannot cure this disease, but maybe I can raise the $1 that can.
It makes me proud to be able to represent a company and a medicine that helps.
It's great that we all talk here, but it really only works if we all go home and amplify that response. And if everybody here went home and did even 10% what we wanted to do, next year the place would be filled with 5,000 people instead of 1,700 people.
We are champions of yes.
My family and I are champions of yes.
Our family is a champion of yes.
We are champions of yes.
We are champions of yes.
I am a champion of yes, and you can be too.
I am proud to be on the board for the Arthritis Foundation, and together we are champions of yes.
So as you know, we are very fortunate to have so many dedicated JA volunteers working on this conference. These are the people that have selfishly given of their time to champion this amazing cause. This morning, you're going to hear more about some of the top volunteers and individuals who have gone above and beyond the call of duty as we recognize them with the 2015 JA Awards. So please join me in welcoming our MCs for the awards ceremony back up on the stage, Arthritis Foundation's President and CEO, Ann Palmer, and Mike Ortman, our Executive Board Chair.
Thank you, Rochelle. You know, one of my favorite duties with the Arthritis Foundation is handing out awards. I got to do it this year at the Advocacy Summit. I get to do it again today. I love it because I get to share a few more stories of kids, parents, doctors, and others doing great things, true champions of yes. But before we tell you about our 4 honorees this morning, we're going to take a few minutes to pay tribute to the namesake of one of those awards. This year, we lost a pioneer in pediatric rheumatology who was instrumental in shaping this conference. Dr. Earl J. Brewer passed away at the age of 86. He had a professional career that spanned more than 30 years. He was a pivotal force in helping move pediatric rheumatology forward and was on the forefront of changes in care and knowledge in this field. It is because of Dr. Brewer that we have access to medical treatments that give us hope for our kids. He began in a small-town medical practice in Wharton, Texas, and went on to become a leader in clinical research and educational service projects at the National Institutes of Health, the Food and Drug Administration, and the Department of Health and Human Services Child Health Bureau. Dr. Earl Brewer committed nearly 4 decades to the improvement of care for kids with arthritis. At one time, there was no such thing as a pediatric rheumatologist. Most children with chronic arthritis were in wheelchairs, on crutches, or in bed. Adult rheumatologists thought that children with arthritis were medical curiosities and quite rare. Dr. Brewer disagreed, saying that if there were meaningful health care facilities available, parents would bring their children forward for treatment. At a time when there were very few studies in children with arthritis, Dr. Brewer brought a data-based scientific approach and the highest standards of methodology to research. His research and international consensus building led to the first juvenile rheumatoid arthritis disease classification. From the start, Dr. Brewer worked collaboratively with a broad range of providers to give kids the best care possible. Excuse me. That includes physical therapists, orthopedic surgeons, psychologists, and others. He understood many principles of what is today accepted as sound care of children with arthritis and rheumatic diseases, emphasized the importance of early diagnosis, and wrote the very first medical textbook on what we now know as juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. Dr. Brewer was part of the planning for the first JA conference more than 30 years ago, and here we are, still going strong, 31 years later. Today, we are all part of his legacy to the JA community. And now on to the award that bears his name. Established in 1989 to mark a lasting legacy to Dr. Brewer, the Earl Brewer Award for Physician Leadership is given each year to a healthcare professional who made an outstanding contribution to the care of children with arthritis and rheumatic diseases. This year's winner, Dr. Yukiko Kimura, has touched the lives of thousands of JA patients and their families during her 33 years of practice in pediatric rheumatology. Dr. Kimura is the chief of pediatric rheumatology at the Joseph Sanzari Children's Hospital at Hackensack University and Medical Center in New Jersey. Her involvement with the foundation goes back over 2 decades, starting with her fellowship grant in 1991. She's been an active board member in New Jersey since 2009 and served as a Walk to Cure Arthritis Chair and Medical Honoree. At the 2012 Arthritis Foundation New Jersey Awards Gala, she was honored for single-handedly raising more than $43,000 in scholarships. Dr. Kimura is both a researcher and nationally recognized clinician and was the primary author of the consensus treatment plan for new onset juvenile idiopathic arthritis, published in the 2012 issue of Arthritis Care and Research. This plan set the standard of treatment for pediatric patients worldwide. Dr. Kimura serves as the chair-elect of our partner, CARA, that you'll learn more about later today, and will assume the role of chair in 2016. She is also a member, as am I, of the Arthritis Foundation's 2015 JA Task Team. Please join me in a round of applause for Dr. Kimura, who is unfortunately not able to be with us today, but accepting on her behalf is a father of a patient of Dr. Kimura's, Vincent Delgaizo. His son Chris has been a patient for 14 years. Let's thank Dr. Kimura. Vincent. There you are. There we are. Okay. We can't see as well as you can see us. Thanks. Appreciate it. The Kathy Angel Leadership Award for Parents is presented to the parent who has shown exceptional courage and strength in leading their family through the struggles of living with a pediatric rheumatic disease, generously shared their time and talents by serving in parent leadership roles, and supported the Arthritis Foundation in the local community through fundraising events, volunteer opportunities, and JA activities. In 2015, the recipient is Toby Anderson, an active volunteer, fundraiser, and advocate with the Arthritis Foundation for more than 10 years. And by the way, when I arrived here for our walkthrough this morning at about 7:45, she was diligently putting those surveys on your chairs. She is the embodiment of a wonderful volunteer. She has been the pillar of strength for her daughter, Alexandria, who was diagnosed at age 4. Toby knew she needed to find support and resources for her daughter and quickly turned to the Arthritis Foundation. Toby and her entire family have attended the JA conference numerous times and made lasting relationships with other JA families. Participating, volunteering, and/or fundraising at nearly every event and program offered by their local office, Toby and her family have been a top walk fundraising team for the past 6 years. Al's Pals raised more than $14,000 for the 2015 Walk to Cure Arthritis at the Mall of America in St. Paul, Minnesota. And Alex ranked among the top 20 individual fundraisers in the country. Toby serves as the event chair and is now part of the National Volunteer Walk Committee. Join me in congratulating the winner of the 2015 Kathy Angel Award for Parent Leadership, Toby Anderson. The Dawn Hafley Award for Youth Leadership is presented to a youth leader under 18 who has shown exceptional courage and strength in their own experience of living with a pediatric rheumatic disease, demonstrated leadership by volunteering their time and talents to benefit other young people living with a pediatric rheumatic disease, and is involved with the Arthritis Foundation in the local community through fundraising events, volunteer opportunities, or JA activities. 13-year-old Erin Edgar was diagnosed with JA just 2 years ago, and 6 months later was leading the charge for her local Jingle Bell Run team. Erin's Elves was 2013's #1 fundraiser in Westchester, New York, with more than $11,000. Erin and her family participated in the JBR despite the fact that she could not even walk at that point. Her family pushed her stroller through the entire route on a windy, snowy December morning. 10 feet before the finish line, Erin made her sister stop. She stopped, she stood up, and walked the final steps across the finish line. Erin's hope for 2014 was to walk the entire course, and she did. And while her physical achievement was cause enough to celebrate, she and her family raised over $16,000 in only their second Jingle Bell Run. Beyond being a stellar fundraiser and youth honoree, Erin has volunteered her time as an arthritis advocate. This spring, Erin registered as a youth ambassador with the Northeast region and began building relationships with elected officials. In March 2015, she and her mother attended their first advocacy summit in Washington, D.C. She takes her passion to school, spreading awareness and raising money for the Arthritis Foundation there as well. Please welcome to the stage the winner of the 2015 Dawn Hafley Award for Youth Leadership, Erin Edgar. Yes. And our fourth and final award is the Patty Reddick Award for Healthcare Professional Leadership, and it's presented annually to the healthcare professional who has demonstrated commitment to the Arthritis Foundation through fundraising events, volunteer opportunities, and JA activities. The award recipient must be involved with patient care and a strong advocate for children with pediatric rheumatic diseases. This year's recipient, Denise McGinley, is a nurse and an inspiration to everyone who knows her in the JA community, especially the kids and staff at the JA camps in Arizona. Denise is volunteer. Yes, go ahead. It's all right. She's volunteered the last 3 years at the camps and as the camp nurse and medical director and at these camps in Arizona and others. Not only does Denise take care of kids' bumps and bruises, but she also creates costumes, as you can see, for skit nights as she crashes the flash mob in a homemade tutu made of toilet paper. Denise completely understands what JA families go through, having raised 2 boys with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. At the time they were diagnosed, McGinley's family was only the 13th known family with that type of EDS they had. Denise has stood in the shoes of every parent of a JA child, of a child with a JA and related diseases, and she has lived the innermost fears and struggles of us all. 8 years ago, when Denise lost both of her boys, she promised that everything she had learned from them, she would use to improve the lives of others. She has more than delivered on this promise, going above and beyond the call of duty, acting as a lifeline for her campers. Unfortunately, she could not be with us today, but please join me in a round of applause for the winner of the 2015 Patty Reddick Award for Healthcare Professional Leadership, Denise McGinley. What an inspirational group of people who are true champions of yes, inspiring hope in all of us. Please join me in another round of applause for all of our winners. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn you back to my staff partner in crime, Ann Palmer. Ann?
Thanks, Mike. Well, good morning, everybody. It's really nice to be with you here. I wasn't around yesterday. I was at a nearby hotel. We had our board meeting, and so I'm looking forward to being with you today and tomorrow. And I heard that you guys had a pretty good time yesterday. A little singing by some people, and sounds like you guys had a pretty good time. And so I'm looking forward to participating in that and seeing how you guys do all this. So again, have to say congratulations to our award winners. Very inspiring for me, and certainly to our committee. You know, my job today is to tell you a little bit more about the Arthritis Foundation, and the good news is I'm really not going to do that. I think you've heard enough. I think you know that we're proud to be a family. We're proud of all the work and everything that happens here, and it warms my heart really to hear the stories and to see the leadership and know how families here are supporting each other. I'm going to quickly just run through the 4 pillars because that's what I was asked to do, so I don't want to be a bad girl and not do that. But I'm going to do it in just a quick little way. the 4 pillars, if you can just put all 4 of them up there. You know, we have been doing help and support for a long time. And we've been through a process of kind of refocusing and really agreeing as a group across the country what our priorities are. And you can see up here we have help and support, and that's always been something that we're doing. And we're going to do it more and better than we've ever done. Certainly believe that advocacy is important. It's always been important to us, but the battles that you all fight every day, trying to get the medications you need, trying to be able to get access to care that you need, we've also had to really kind of pivot from just being an organization that was focused on the federal issues to one that had to fight battles in the states, because we know that's where those battles are going to be won for you. Those where those decisions are going to be made that really help millions of people. And you all have done a great job. Many of you have signed up here today to be a part of our advocacy program. We've always had a great scientific agenda, and I'm going to introduce some of our friends from CARA later on, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think the important thing for you to know, and I want you to understand this, that we really drew out the 4th pillar. When you talk about help and support and research and science and advocacy, that helps all people with arthritis. But as the board and I went through this journey in this last year and a half or so, we decided that really we were going to fully commit to you all. And so we created that 4th pillar of JA. And so I want you all to know that we're fully committed to you all. We're fully committed to making life better to the best we can. And I'm going to introduce just a really quick video that'll show you a little bit more about our pillars, and then we'll go from there. So showing you the video reminds me that part of what's so great about the Arthritis Foundation is that we're a volunteer organization. We have wonderful volunteers we've recognized, and Rochelle and her team, but we're also a partnership. We're a partnership of staff and volunteers. So if you'll indulge me, I'd like to have those that are in the room that are staff that have worked very hard on this, some of our staff leaders stand up and let's say thank you to them for partnering with Rochelle and others on this great event. Thank you. You know, they've been very excited to partner and join the enthusiasm that Rochelle and the committee have brought to this and have worked really hard. You know, so now I get to talk about Kara and how we started on this journey. And one of my very first meetings, I attended the ACR meeting, and then I was invited to join the Kara group at their annual meeting, and I didn't know what to expect, but I came into a room full of pediatric rheumatologists who were amazingly committed. Obviously bright, smart people, but amazingly committed, and they have created this awesome registry. And they did it on their own. I mean, I was just sort of blown away by it. I'm like, you have jobs, you have to take care of these patients, obviously they cared so much. And here was this whole organization, totally volunteer-driven, that was doing this amazing work with this registry. And honestly, I've worked in volunteer organizations all my life, and I was just really taken away, really, with the passion and the leadership of that group. And I then found out that there was another group, Friends of Kara, and I was trying to figure out, what's all this? You know, why are there's all these different groups? So I decided that I would go out and meet with Vincent, who started Friends of Kara, to try to understand why there was a separate organization. So I went up to visit with Vincent, and we spent 4, 5, 6 hours together. And first of all, I learned a lot about him and his family and his journey and what was important to him and his family. I think we connected, we understood each other. And I thought, you know, we've got to figure this out. We have to find a way that we're all going to work together, because at the same time, the Arthritis Foundation was deciding about how it was going to make an investment in research in JA. And I thought to myself, well, why would we do that? Why would we go out and invest in something different than this? So this is how this partnership started, and we've talked about that we were able to sign this partnership a year ago, and we have a wonderful joint steering committee, and we're, you know, finding our way and what this means at holding hands. But we're fully committed, Kara and myself, the Arthritis Foundation, to really doing great things in research so that we can have a better life for your children. And so it's my privilege right now to introduce to you Laura Schanberg, who's going to tell you about Kara and the great work that they're doing. Laura?
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. The lights, you're right, they are pretty strong. And I've been suffering from a bit of a cold, so I may have to take a break if I start coughing. So anyway, Anne asked me to come and speak with y'all about Kara and Kara's perspective on this partnership with the AF. Let me start out by saying we're extremely excited about it. And that's everything in a nutshell. But one of the things that I've realized as I've worked some with AF, both locally and nationally, is that not everybody knows what Kara is. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to also say a few things and make sure, you told me, so why Kara started, okay? If you look at drug development in JIA, we're all delighted by the fact that there are so many, I don't have a pointer, but there are so many drugs now, right? And when I started training, not back in the 1920s, even if it sort of looks like that, some of this predates me, but over here in the 1980s, okay, I actually was a fellow when methotrexate came out. And that was the first, revelation that we could actually get kids into remission, that we had something to do for them. But even more recently, there has been a flood of drugs, which is terrific, and that's the good news. But the bad news is that, I pointed over here? The bad news is that morbidity, oh, now I have so many things to hold. But it looks like these are big enough. That's big enough that I don't need my glasses. But it turns out that there is still significant, as you guys all know, just walking in today, I heard people chatting about how their children had a great time, their arthritis child had a great time yesterday, but today or last night was suffering from all the activity and stuff. So you guys well know that morbidity continues to be high, despite, that means symptoms, okay? And that children are still suffering despite the fact that we have all these wonderful new drugs. And in fact, I've done some research myself that shows that children are still having pain, because actually it turns out a lot of pediatric rheumatologists didn't know that. They thought that now that we have all our biologics, that children weren't having pain anymore, but in fact they still are. How we use the drugs, right? Industry trials tell us that drugs work, but they don't tell us how to use them. They don't tell us when to stop them. They don't even tell us when to start them, okay? And so the treatments that have traditionally been used in pediatric rheumatology are not truly evidence-based, and they're not standardized. So depending on where you are in the country, you may get a slightly different treatment. Some doctors want to start with methotrexate. Some doctors like to start with a biologic. Which biologic they may want to start with may be different. And none of those choices are wrong now. But we want to make some of those choices be wrong, right? Because we want to standardize care and make sure that care is optimal, is the best that it can be. And what rheumatologists knew was that the cancer folks had done a great job of this, right? Methotrexate was the first drug for cancer, too. And by joining together cancer docs and putting literally every child in this country gets on some kind of protocol, they were able to bring down the mortality rate significantly. And pediatric rheumatologists knew this, right? Because we all have colleagues and stuff. And we want to do the same thing with juvenile arthritis, all forms of rheumatic diseases in children. And then we knew that the only way we could do that was by working together. Because we're spread out, you guys are spread out, and only by working together were we going to be able to make that kind of impact. So a single study at a single site was never going to answer these questions. So we did what Ann alluded to. Pediatric rheumatologists got together and created CARA. Wait a minute, I'm getting confused which thing to push. Let's try this one. Okay, so I've already sort of laid out some of the problems, right? Lots of meds, relatively few patients. We got some pockets here and some pockets there, but we need everybody together to be able to get enough data. We have relatively few investigators, right? Does everybody in this room see a pediatric rheumatologist? Are there people who don't go to a pediatric rheumatologist? I see one, two, couple, more. And I can tell you nationwide, there are significant numbers. There are 5 states that don't have a pediatric rheumatologist. And almost 50% of medical schools don't have a pediatric rheumatologist, okay? And obviously it's the pediatric rheumatologists who are going to be doing this kind of research. So we have relatively few investigators, and we have a ton of questions, right? I have a ton of questions. I assume you guys have a ton of questions too, right? How safe are those drugs for the long haul for my child? Okay? Your pediatric rheumatologist can only tell you for the regular short term because the drugs haven't been around that long. And they're not actually being studied, hadn't been being studied for the long haul. And in fact, the FDA only requires 5 years of safety follow-up. Pet peeve of mine, because I don't want to know 5 years. And I suspect you guys don't either, right? We want to know 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. So we knew that we had to do something. And as I already mentioned, we're not sure about the optimal use. And we don't know the real biologic impact. Okay, so I know that if I give an anti-TNF agent, that blocks TNF, which is a cytokine. Hopefully you guys have heard the word TNF, tumor necrosis factor. But I don't really know what else it's doing. I know what it does within arthritis, but I don't actually know that much about what it is really doing to the immune system. We also know that RA studies, so rheumatoid arthritis studies, are only of limited utility if we just take assumptions from them to children for lots of reasons. One is RA and JA and other rheumatic diseases is not the same thing. We know the biologies are different. So it doesn't make sense to be able to just assume that what works for RA is going to work for JA. We also know that children aren't little adults. Everybody's heard that 100 times, but it's really true. And we know that we're giving these medicines to children whose immune systems are not mature yet. That is not true in adults. We also know that the way drugs are processed by children are different than the way that they're processed by adults. So just making assumptions from the RA studies is not a good idea. As I also alluded to, our industry has been driving the scientific agenda in pediatric rheumatology because they're the ones that have had the money. And so they study the drugs, which is terrific, okay? And they tell us that they work, but as we talked about, they don't really tell us how to use them. And then we have the other issue that parents and our society traditionally has wanted to protect children by not making them part of studies. The problem with that is then we're stuck making assumptions, and we're actually exposing them to more risk than if they were in good studies and we were collecting information and safety data and drug dosing data and all that stuff. Okay? We know, and this is true in children and adults, we know that people who are in a study actually do better than people who are not in a study, no matter what arm they go into. How many of you knew that? Okay, that's not an overwhelming show of hands. So we have to get the word out about that. Okay, and the reason is because if you're in a study, there's some standardization in your care. And everybody is invested. The families are invested, the investigators are invested. And we need to figure out not just how to get the people who are here to be interested and not skeptical about research, but also the people the day they walk in the door. Because in fact, at the very beginning when your child is first diagnosed is in some ways the most important time for us to be able to get information about them before the drugs have changed their biology. Whoops, wrong one. So, pediatric rheumatologists decided that we needed to get together and work together, and we were able from the very beginning to get support from the Arthritis Foundation. Okay? They really, from the very beginning, knew this was a good idea and have provided support. Although it was on a much more streamlined level, just to put it nicely. So as Anne came in, and she and I began to talk, and we got our organizations talking, AF, fortunately, from my perspective, decided that this was the place to make the investment in children research. And New Year's Eve this year, 2014, we signed an agreement. So we were on the phone, Ann and I, rather than out with our families. We were talking on the phone and finalizing this agreement. And this is really now a commitment by the AF and CARA to work together to improve treatment and work for a cure. Now, so for those of you who don't know, CARA is 120 sites in North America. There are 425 members. Now, for those of you who know anything about workforce, we don't have that many pediatric rheumatologists in North America. And it includes coordinators and fellows and PhD psychologists who are working with children who have arthritis. And our mission, and this is actually a brand new mission, we've just put this together, is to conduct collaborative research to prevent, treat, and cure pediatric rheumatic disease with a vision of a world free of limitations from pediatric rheumatic diseases. And as I mentioned, you can see here, those blue things are all where we have sites. And we have about over 95% of all the pediatric rheumatologists in North America belong to CARA. So I can tell you that where you see those big holes, there aren't pediatric rheumatologists. So how do we do this? You know, how does CARA work on research? So one of the first things we needed to do was change the culture, okay? Within the pediatric rheumatology community, since research hadn't been a big part of it, there wasn't a culture of research. And so the first thing we needed to do was change that culture. Make it that every kid that walked in the door and every pediatric rheumatologist expected research to be part of care, okay? Not something separate sitting over here, but part of care. And we've been doing that. We've had some grants from the government. We've, ERA funding, right? Did some good things, funded CARA in a big way. We've been developing consensus treatment plans. Dr. Kimura led one of those efforts, and that's trying to standardize care, and then trying to improve the standard of clinical care through clinical studies and by promoting quality improvement. So the CARA portfolio now, Anne mentioned something called the registry. So the biggest way, I'm not segueing into this very well, I'm sorry. Not very smooth there. So the CARA registry was one of the things that the ERA grant funded. And we decided that the best way to change the culture in pediatric rheumatology and make research part of it was to do a registry. Because with a registry, we can put in lots of different kinds of patients. It's not limited to single disease or single presentations. Many of our investigators can participate in it, even if they don't have a lot of research experience, and we can get lots of information from it. And so we founded the CARA registry, and that is a database that we can use for doing lots of other things, like we use the CARA registry to do observational and natural history studies. We use the CARA registry can be used for quality improvement, and we're working on making that happen. We use it to do comparative effectiveness research. We can use it for pharmacosurveillance, just means safety studies. We're using the registry. The idea is to follow kids for at least 10 years and be able to see how safe the drugs that they're taking are. We are using it as a way to link samples that are collected with clinical data, because samples by themselves are not nearly as valuable as they are if you link them with clinical data. And all of the data comes in and sits in the registry. And then we do translational studies with that data in the CARA registry and the samples linked together. And then we're starting to use the registry. We have some grants into the NIH to do some clinical trials, again, using the registry as data collection. So our partnership, and the JSC is the Joint Steering Committee that CARA and AF have. The goals are to do joint fundraising, to align research strategies, so the AF's research strategies are the same as CARA's and vice versa, that we share administrative resources and expertise. I can tell you that the last CARA meeting was so cool and so professional. It was really exciting because the AF people, Becky, I've seen her somewhere, some of the staff people from AF have just made it wonderful. It was the first time I didn't have to stress out about AV stuff. We have stable funding now for CARA, more stable funding than we've had from the AF before by a factor of 10, 20, a lot, okay? And obviously that opens up a whole new world to us. And it's made it possible for us to keep the registry going. And we're promoting patient engagement and research. And interestingly, that's working both ways. We're helping AF help patients get more into research. And then, of course, AF is helping us identify more patients that we can engage in our research activities. And then the other thing is promoting junior investigators, which may not sound that exciting, but I can tell you it is extremely important, especially in this particular funding environment. So, we're saying yes to research together, CARA and the AF together, big champions of yes, and working towards a cure, and when we can't cure, making people children be treated as well as possible. And these are just some of my patients, and I thank them for letting me use pictures. Thanks. Whoops. I didn't segue you either.
Hello, everyone. Before I get started, I want to thank you, Anne, for embracing pediatric rheumatology the way you have, and thanks to everyone for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about decision making, and so as you now know, I have a son who was diagnosed systemic JA. He was 15 months old at the time. That was back in 2001. He happens to be a triplet too, so that was pretty complicated. But basically, I want to go through some of the decisions that I had to make caring for my son. And none of these are unique, and none of our experiences are unique, but sometimes it helps to hear things from somebody else. And I think you'll understand why as I move forward. So 15 months old, very, very, very sick. Brought him to the hospital, and he had all the classic symptoms, you know, the 106 fevers twice a day. He was in a hospital intensive care unit, and we had like the parade of doctors and how many times you have to give that history. And I remember my wife saying, you know, like one doctor after the next trying to figure out what was wrong with this kid. And he was more like a carnival sideshow than I mean, it was crazy. And my wife was getting aggravated saying, I told the last guy, it started like this and then it went to this. And I told my wife, I said, you know what, I understand I'm frustrated too, but you have to understand that eventually we're gonna run across somebody that knows what they're doing or has experienced this before. And that's when we'll get answers. And plus, there's an opportunity to, you know, do something for the greater good, kind of, you know, teach these guys what's going on. So what wound up happening was they couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. 3 weeks in the intensive care unit, stopped testing, stopped treating, sent him to another doctor in another hospital. And the doctor saw him for, it was Yuki, who you know now, took about 5 minutes to diagnose him and explained what was going on. And, you know, we were kind of relieved, you know, that we had a diagnosis and we knew what was going on now. And it's funny, like, she was going over treatment options and this and that and the other thing. And again, you have to understand, 106 fevers twice a day, rash all over his body, couldn't move a muscle, couldn't do anything. He's 15 months old, so he can't tell you what's going on. Incredibly sick. I found out about 2 years later that he set the dubious distinction, setting the highest white count that Yuki's ever seen in practice, 53,000 or something like that. It was crazy, crazy sick. And she's going over so we have to make a decision on treatment. She's going over treatment stuff, and as the caregiver, I'm sitting there, and she's talking, and it's Charlie Brown's Adults. It's wah, 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 wah. And then you hear, and we use this because it gets they get better fast. And I'm like, that's the one I want to use, the one that makes him better fast. It didn't matter what it was. So we had to make a decision on a treatment, but it really was no decision. It was whatever's going to work the fastest. And so we said yes to that, which was IV steroids, and 18 months old, he's on 65 milligrams of steroids. He was up 21 hours a day. It was crazy, but he was getting better. And, you know, being up 21 hours a day, my wife and I, and again, he's a triplet, right? So he's 15 months old, and my wife and I are like, oh my God, like, what are we gonna do? Is this normal? We don't know. Like, it's bad that he's up 21 hours a day, but he's moving, he's strong, and he wasn't able to move before, so this is all a good thing. And, you know, so we, obviously, as we learned more, we realized steroids are so bad, and he was on such a high dose, and we're trying to wean him off, and we're adding other medications, and he's getting better and better and better. And, you know, as he gets better, we go for our weekly visit, and she's increasing medications. And we're like, he's getting better. Why are you increasing medications? Well, there's a little inflammation in that knee. And my mom would call me up and say, what did the doctor say? What did the doctor say? And I said, I don't need to know what the doctor said. I know how my son is doing. You know, we all become experts in kinesiology, you know, especially when they're like 15 months old, 18 months old, you know, so you realize that going down the steps in the morning, that little hop down the steps, it's because he can't bend his knees, you know, or that just going like this, the right knee is bothering him, right? So you pick up on things and you become experts in knowing how your child is doing without him telling you anything. And to this day, he's 15, he still doesn't tell us anything. So you got to kind of watch him in order to know what's going on. So she's increasing drugs, and we're like, oh my God, why is she doing this? And then she's doing another joint exam, measuring his limbs, and his right leg is significantly bigger than his left. And we're like, well, how did that happen? Well, it's that inflammation I was telling you about in his knee that I've been trying to get it out by increasing the medication. So we're like, that's when we realize that inflammation is bad. So when there's inflammation, you have to intervene somewhat. So we know now when it's really bad, when we're in that place, we need something quick. If there's inflammation, we have to treat, okay? So we jack him up on whatever he could tolerate, starts bad liver enzymes, so we have to back off, and then he flares up, and that's when I accepted that he had JIA. Like, before that, it's got to be something else, you know. But that was the day that I accepted that he had JA when he flared up. So then the decision became to put him on a biologic, which we put him on a biologic. And he did very, very well on the biologic and all of his other medications. And it was going on a couple of years, and then we had another decision to make. She said, you know, he's doing really well, and I think we can take him off medication. And here I am, like, in the beginning, I hated the drugs. And then we come to this day, and I'm like, are you sure? What happens if he gets sick again? We can't go back to that place. And she's, don't worry about it. We have to try. We don't know if he needs it until we take it away. And I was always concerned that he would flare back up. So we took the drugs away and held our breath. And he did pretty well for a number of years and was off everything for a number of years. And then all of a sudden, he got sick again. And we knew a lot more the second time around because of science. You know, with systemics, we knew TNF-alpha might not be the way to go. So we had to make a decision because he got sick again. He was around 9 years old at the time and got the rash again. Fortunately, no fevers, but very, very, a lot of joint involvement. Walked around the house like this for 3 weeks, could not care for himself, could not cut his food, could not wash his hair, could not do a thing. And a very, very bad rash. And again, none of these stories are unique. I'm sure a lot of you guys have the same thing. I'm just trying to explain how we went through our thought process and made our decisions. And what wound up happening was we decided to enroll him in a drug study because we knew that that gave him the best chance of success. This drug, on paper, was a proof of concept drug. This drug, science-wise, could work for him. And it's funny that he never complained ever. He's never complained about pain. He's always complained about the rash because he would scratch himself until he bled. And he would cry about the rash, but never cried about pain, never cried that he couldn't move his arm or his wrists. He likes to play ice hockey. His brother was on a team, and he had a tournament, and we had to start this study, and my wife said, no, you can't start the study. You can't give him a drug that I don't know anything about and then go to Massachusetts for a weekend. So I said, okay, we'll start it when I get back, no problem. And he asked to come with us. And so, you know, it was fine for him to come with us. The only thing he was taking at the time was Zyrtec for his rash. And he had bottles of Zyrtec that he used to drink, I swear to God, like Kool-Aid. Like he would just, because the rash drove him crazy. And we get to the tournament, and he says he wants to play. And he's 9 years old again at the time, and it's amazing how you guys, I don't know, and he's not unique, how you guys do this. It's like, even like Jen with her bike ride, you know, how do you fathom doing this? But he decides to play. They're doing the warm-ups, and he goes down to do pregame push-ups with one arm like this. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, the rest of the team's doing push-ups. I got to do push-ups, and I can't straighten my right arm. I said, don't worry about it. You know, now the rest of the team is doing it. I want to do it. And he's like, I'm worried if I get itchy. He's not worried that he can't move a muscle in his body. He's worried he's going to get itchy. With all his equipment on, how is he going to scratch, right? So he goes, I convince him, don't worry about it. He goes out there. He plays literally with one arm on his stick. One arm on this kid's stick, and he plays in a hockey game. Scored a goal, actually. It was absolutely... Absolutely crazy determination and courage that you guys have. It's just, that's why I'm so involved in this cause, because you guys hold my heart. you know. After the game, he jumped in the pool, and I'm watching him, and he's under there for so long, and I get nervous, and I go over to the pool, and he finally made his way up, and I go down, "Are you all right?" And he goes, "I forgot, I can't move my arm." I said, "Well, maybe you should go in the shallow end." He said, "Yeah, that's a good idea," you know. So he winds up going on this drug, and literally he gets the loading dose, and he walks downstairs the next day. He goes, "Hey, I could move my arm again." And first time in 3 weeks. And he picks up his shirt. He goes, "Oh, my rash is gone too," right? So he does really well on this drug, and like 3 or 4 days later, he doesn't want to go to school. And now here's a kid who's a triplet, a lot of very good friends, does very, very well in school and doesn't want to go to school anymore. And my wife is like, "It's a drug. Something's wrong. It's messing with his mind. Something's wrong. We got to figure this out. We got to take him off the drug." And I'm saying, "Remember what he was like a couple of weeks ago? We can't take him off this drug. There's got to be a logical explanation for this." So it turns out we've learned they were doing the physical fitness test in gym, and he could go maybe about down to here, you know, and he was getting teased by his friends. And they were friends, and it wasn't a malicious thing. You know, it was, Chris Kidd, I just, or whatever, you know. And so we gave him strategies to deal with that and explained to him that, you know, everybody's good at different things. So what, that you can't throw a football, you could skate, they can't skate, and, you know, and everything was fine. But, you know, it just goes to show that, you know, we live in a very cause-effect society, and you know, just because he was on the drug didn't mean that it was messing with his mind. So now, today, the study ended, he had to go off the drug, and then he decides, we look at him, he's doing really well, except for about a year later, off all drugs, about a year later, his feet are kind of different sizes, so kind of like with the knee early on, and we realized we have to intervene again. And we go on another biologic, and he does very well with that. And then all of a sudden, he says he doesn't want to do it anymore. He's now 14 at the time. So we take him off it. He seems to be doing well. He's got everybody fooled, including Yuki. His blood work is fooled, you know, because his blood work always comes back normal. But when you do, you see the evidence, right? You see his feet, and he goes to get the MRI, and they're like, "How are you even walking?" And he can completely snow everybody, you know, so he's got to go back on treatment, but he doesn't want to go back on treatment, so we have to make another decision. And we bring him in, and we say, "All right, what do you want to do?" And he's like, "Well, I don't want to be on a weekly treatment because it takes too long." And Yuki's like, "Well, how long does it take?" A couple of minutes. That's too long for him, right? Now, it's the regimen that he didn't like. So we made our treatment decision this time based on what was important to him at the time, which was not doing it every week. So we chose a drug that he didn't have to take every week. So at every step of the way here, we had things that were important to us and to him, like to make these decisions, and they're unique. So some people have a hard time dealing with pain. They need to take something that's going to alleviate pain, or, you know, the one thing that we know, you have to get rid of the inflammation, otherwise you have those problems. But there's fatigue. There's things that are important to you guys that the doctors don't know about. And in the past, the doctors always thought, okay, if I get rid of inflammation and the blood work looks good, this is great, the patient's happy. But if you guys are taking the medication and getting sick the next day, that might be tolerable, depends on the circumstance. For us, in the beginning, when he was on all those medications and up 21 hours a day, it was tolerable because we knew the alternative. And it was tolerable for him to be sick all day the following day after he got his really high methotrexate doses and all the other stuff that he was getting. That was tolerable to us. But then things changed. Now the nausea is not really tolerable to my son because he's got other things going on. So as everyone has been mentioning, I've been very involved with research, and early on I went to a CARE meeting. I was invited to go to a CARE meeting, scientific agenda meeting, and they were talking about research and what I thought. What do you, Vincent, like a big room like this, Vincent, what do you think? I'm the only patient there, and here's a bunch of researchers talking about research, and I'm like, you know, kind of sliding under the chair. I didn't know what to say. And I said, oh, you know, I don't think I'm qualified to answer that, and, you know, made up some BS stuff. And in between breaks, one of the CARE doctors, Brian Feldman, approached me and said, look, you're a business owner, right? I said, yes. He said, how do you know what your customers want? And I said, well, I ask them and I talk to them and I know what they want. And he said, well, we're the business owners, you're the customer, you have to tell us what's important to you because we could be completely off base. So the light bulb went off. I do know, I am qualified. Like I told my mom, I know when my son is doing well, I know what's important to me. You guys are qualified to participate in research. You're qualified to design studies. You're qualified to know what's important to you. I sat at an ACR task force meeting to develop a treatment algorithm for systemic JIA. What drug to use first, second, third, fourth. And all these people with careers in research and disease talking, saying, it's okay if a kid comes to me with being very, very sick with a lot of systemic features, meaning rash and fevers and this and that and the other thing, and no joints, to only treat with Advil. And because there's no joint involvement, right? So this is okay. And I said, you know what? It's not okay. Because that's the only thing that... For my son, the most important thing was rash. He cried like a baby over his rash, never cried about the joints. So you can't tell a patient that it's okay. You can't prescribe Advil to a patient as sick as my son was, even if he didn't have joint involvement. And you know what? They listened. These experts, they listened to what I had to say and they changed. They changed what they were doing. They changed study designs. Okay? So you guys can do this. And sometimes it's pretty complicated because, you know, you talk to these guys and things fly over your head. You're not going to know what a Bayesian analysis is and power calculations, designing studies and stuff like that. But you know what's important to you. You know, I would allow my data to be shared. I would participate in this study. I wouldn't participate in this study because I have to go every week or I have to do this or I have to do that. You know, so giving that feedback to these guys is so important. So what winds up happening is the Affordable Care Act funds something called the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute. So this is where it all kind of comes together, okay? So the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute funds comparative effectiveness research. So in the beginning, on my journey in 2001, there was very few options. You know, you saw that timeline that Laura had. Very few options on what to do, how to treat. And today, we have options, but we don't know which one to choose, right? So that's a great thing that we have this Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute that is funding comparative effectiveness research. And it's also funding something called PCORnet, which is a national, it's kind of like a national database of patients. And there's different what they call PPRNs, patient-powered research networks, like different disease groups, and there's clinical data research networks, which are like hospital systems that are contributing data, patient data, de-identified patient data to a database. And CARA researchers submitted a grant to be one of these data partners, and it's called Partners, which stands for Patients, Advocates, Rheumatology Teams Network for something and service, research and service. So, you know, the important thing is you know what they do, not what the letters stand for, right? It's like QVC, you know. I know what QVC is, I don't know what the letters stand for. But so this Partners is a partnership of the Arthritis Foundation, the Lupus Foundation, CARA researchers, a quality improvement network called PR Coin, which go visit their booth and learn about what quality improvement is, and patients. And with this network, we're building the infrastructure to do in a formal way what I've always done on an informal way. Go to CARA meetings, for instance. You guys getting involved in research. And there is handouts at the PR Coin thing, you know, that can explain all this stuff to you. And one of the examples I use about comparative effectiveness research is this thing about a coffee pot, right? Trying to make these decisions between different kinds of drugs. Like today we're in an information world, and if we need to make a decision and we need to know what to do, we Google it and we get the information that we need. And in medical research and choosing your drugs, you don't have that. So like if your coffee pot is broken, you go to Google and say, well, what is important to me in a coffee pot? What's important to me is this, it makes a lot of coffee, blah, 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 blah. And I Google it, I find what I need. In the medical world, you ask your doctor, what if you don't like your doctor's coffee? You know? What's important to the doctor in treatment might not be that important to you. And that's really, so I talked about my son. I see the time is ticking down. I want to show you what my son is up to now. This video was actually taken a couple of years ago. You gotta kind of have to watch it if they can cue it up. Jen, I don't know if you're around to cue up the video. But he's up there, that's him with the puck right there. This was taken 2 years ago. He's 6'2", 174 pounds. That's where he is actually this weekend in Delaware. Yeah, it's great that he's doing really well, and I love that he's doing really well. But the most important part about that, he's an incredible success story. That was not supposed to be his life. How sick he was, when he got sick. I look at it, though, as wasted opportunity, because had the CARA registry and all this stuff been going on 15 years ago, maybe we could have learned something from his case. And it's sad, it really is, because maybe there's something that we did with him that could have benefited somebody else, and we could have learned from him. And that's why it's so important to share your de-identified data, to enroll in studies, and to be part of protocol so that others can learn from you. And you know, I'm hoping that, like, you guys go home and go to your pediatric rheumatologist and you ask to be part of registries and you ask to answer survey questions. Remember, they listen. They listen, they change. And they need to know what's important to you. And the only way that they're going to know what's important to you is for you to answer these surveys and tell them what's important to you. So again, thank you very much for giving me the time.
Thank you, Vincent. This is really a full circle moment for me and my family. Vincent was the sole individual who got us connected with Kara, and our son was involved in a study that he is referring to, and we'll be talking about that briefly in the next session that's at 10:45. So, with that said, we're going to wrap up a few things. I do have several housekeeping things to share. If this bag looks familiar, it's important we know because there's a syringe in here. So please, if this is yours and you're missing a syringe, we're going to have it at the volunteer registration area, okay? So go get it there. Also, we need to make sure that you please check the reader boards for room changes. There's been a few room changes. And also, please check your baggage tomorrow with the bellman at checkout, and they will hold the bags for you so that you can get them after sessions tomorrow. Tonight, just as a reminder, dinner is on your own, and activities are on your own. However, at lunch today, there are food trucks, and they will be outside the convention area, so go ahead and check it out. We have all different kinds of food. Some of it is donated. So Delicious will have a breakfast desserts that are dairy-free, and those are free, and then the other food trucks are for purchase. And someone last night lost all of their notes, and they took a lot of notes, and it was with their scrunchy black tie and their program. So please go to the volunteer table if that's yours and pick it up. Pretty much if you've lost anything, go to the volunteer registration because it's probably going to end up there. We are going to be shooting advocacy videos of personal arthritis stories to share with the members of Congress and state legislators. So please, if you have a few moments, stop by there. It's just to the door next to the volunteer registration. But I've been asked to please ask anybody who's from Illinois to make sure to go. They need more representation from Illinois. And then finally, hold on because it's on my phone, I am supposed to tell you. Okay, so you know how we're trying to figure out how to do a huge group photo. Can't figure out how to get 1,700 people in a picture. So here's our solution. The idea is that we all take green shirt selfie photos for the photo contest and ask everyone to post it with the hashtag yes4hope or email it to socialmedia@arthritis.org. That's socialmedia@arthritis.org. And then the social media team will lead that whole fusing it all together. So if you could please do that, then that will be a way to get the message out that the conference is all about hope. With that said, we have fabulous sessions planned for everyone, and go have some fun.